All right, let's do a plant feature and let's talk about this Tiny Tim tomato plant. It's a dwarf or micro tomato plant that I think is really cool and I've grown for the last couple of years. This is the Tiny Tim tomato plant. It is a tomato plant that gets about 15 inches in height. This is about as big as it's going to get. And it gives you a good couple of handfuls of good sweet tasting cherry tomatoes, red ones. Tomatoes technically are best grown in full sun, but I actually have these guys on my porch. You can see over there, that's kind of the sun line there. So these guys are not getting a lot of sun, but doing quite well. Now it might be impacting fruit production, but I still see a fair bit of fruit. So I'm not complaining, and my intention to use these is actually as garden decoration, not necessarily for food production. However, that being said, they are technically supposed to be grown in full sun. This is the other one I have growing in full sun, and you can see it's got some disease going on down in here. It looks a little rough. It's definitely full of fruit. I'd actually say that there is definitely more fruit production on less of a plant. So it's kind of interesting to see what the full sun does. Oh, I just lost one in the process. The one next to it definitely not doing as well. If I had to guess the difference in the quality of the plant, it's got to do with the watering. I'm probably not keeping up very well with the watering, or too much so, because we've had rain and I can control the watering on the one on the porch. Let's get into some ideas on how I use the Tiny Tim tomato plant. First one is in a Mr. Stacky or a stackable planter. These guys came from the dollar store. And I have an actual like Mr. Stacky as well. And oddly enough, I really didn't like these stackable planters probably until this year. A lot of the time I find the south is far too hot and there's too small a container and stuff seems to die. But having them on the porch in the shade, putting smaller plants in it, and putting in these micro tomatoes has worked beautifully. So I really like having them in these stackable containers. So I like including vegetable plants in my decorative plant containers. I like the idea of wandering through the garden and seeing my decorative containers and then also picking off a cherry tomato, or in this case, like I'm using it to fill the top of this decorative planter. Could have had all flowers? Absolutely. But now I have the ability to sit here on the porch and occasionally just grab a tomato, and I think that's just awesome. The Tiny Tim tomato plant is a great plant to sell at farmers markets as well. I take them and talk to people about them, and it makes for such an interesting conversation when you tell people that the plant doesn't grow very big. Most people are like, really weird. And it can go home with most people. So even if people are living in a situation where they have a small balcony or really small growing space, the Tiny Tim tomato is perfect. It can go home with almost everybody. The Tiny Tim tomato plant is also really great for kids, and I love encouraging kids to grow. We need more kids to be growing plants and learning to grow gardens, and I think it's so important to encourage that. So this is a great way. Again, I mean, they can take it home. They can almost have it just in their room and take this plant home, and then they can have the excitement that it is a plant that produces a fruit. Now, not all kids love tomato plants, but seeing a big bright red cherry tomato is certainly fun for a kid that's trying to get into growing plants. This one is super great for small containers and small spaces. So if you have a porch or something that with very limited space, a balcony, this one is great for that. If you have a lot of pots to fill, or you just have a pot to grow in, this is a fantastic one for growing in pots. It won't outgrow the size of the pot in most cases. If you're actually someone who's living on the road in a camper, kind of doing the camper lifestyle thing, this is a good one for you to grow along with some herbs to take with you, because it won't take up a lot of space. So in the end, I'm a big fan of this Tiny Tim cherry tomato. Still makes a great salad cherry tomato, fantastic for that. Plus it takes up very little space, so it's a good one to have. A couple of different places online. You'll have to do a Google search for Tiny Tim cherry tomatoes. There's a couple of different places that sell them. My normal place was all out, so I couldn't get any more, but take a look for them online and search for the seeds. Awesome, you guys. Hopefully that helps you. Be friendly, be kind.